A broken radio intercept, garbled and half erased, crackles through a wartime command post. The voice of a Luftwaffe pilot chokes out a desperate report. "Incoming! Too many! Impossible!" The photo pinned beside the radio shows a formation of colossal bombers, silhouettes blurred by smoke trails and bursting flak. But these are not the B-17s or Heinkels the German pilots expected. They are B-29 superfortresses, machines the Reich's air defenses had barely fathomed. How could these be here, hundreds of miles from known American bases in the Pacific? And why were entire cities, once bustling industrial hubs, reduced to smoldering ruins overnight? The contrast is staggering. The indomitable German war machine facing an enemy weapon so advanced it seemed almost otherworldly. Was this a failure of intelligence or something more sinister lurking behind the Allied air campaign? The roots of this nightmare trace back to a secretive pact between Washington and British intelligence, forged in mid-1944. The B-29s, designed for the Pacific theater against Japan, were redeployed in clandestine operations targeting the German heartland. A blueprint marked Operation Thunderclap was buried deep within Allied archives, a plan to unleash mass raids that would cripple German morale and infrastructure. The motive? To force a collapse from within, bypassing the formidable front lines. A fragment of a decrypted message reveals the chilling code: the furnace must burn. Yet the German High Command dismissed early warnings as Allied propaganda. How was it possible that such a strategic pivot escaped the notice of the Reich's formidable intelligence apparatus? What internal conflicts or bureaucratic failures allowed the B-29s to reach German skies with such devastating effect? The B-29 Superfortress was a technological marvel. Its pressurized cabins, remote-controlled gun turrets, and a wingspan exceeding 140 feet made it a flying fortress unlike any other. Armed with 16 0.50 caliber machine guns and a 20mm cannon, it could fly higher and faster than most German interceptors. However, its sheer size and weight made it vulnerable during daylight raids. Blueprints recovered from a downed bomber reveal a critical flaw. The aircraft's defensive perimeter had blind spots exploited by nimble Focke-Wulf fighters. But the scale and pace of the raids overwhelmed existing German air defenses. The B-29s operated in tight formations, their synchronized bombing runs painting cities with fire. What was the true extent of their destructive potential? And why did German engineers struggle to adapt their anti-aircraft strategies to this new threat? The first encounter came on November 9, 1944, when a squadron of B-29s struck Dresden. The Luftwaffe's Jagdgeschwader scrambled interceptors, expecting to meet the slower B-17s they had trained to confront. Instead, they faced a shock. Bombers that maintained altitude above 30,000 feet, outpacing their Messerschmitt Bf-109s. The raid lasted mere hours, but the devastation was immense. Tens of thousands perished, and the city's historic center was obliterated. Squadron reports describe pilots stunned by the unexpected speed and resilience of the B-29s. According to memoirs, some German pilots felt they were chasing ghosts. Why did the Luftwaffe command underestimate the B-29's capabilities? How did this first trial reshape the German perception of Allied air power? In response, German command ordered a rapid modernization of their air defenses. New tactics emerged: night fighter squadrons equipped with radar, experimental jet fighters like the Me-262, and intensified flak batteries around key cities. Pilots were instructed to avoid frontal attacks and instead target engines and fuel tanks during bombing runs. Yet the B-29s adapted with electronic countermeasures and precision bombing techniques. A wartime diary from a Luftwaffe squadron commander hints at growing desperation. "Our skies are no longer ours." Despite these efforts, Cities continued to fall into ruin. Was the German response too little, too late? Or was there a deeper strategic paralysis within the Reich that sealed their fate? By early 1945, the raids intensified. The airspace over Berlin, Hamburg, and Leipzig became a gauntlet of fire and smoke. Fuel shortages and pilot losses crippled the Luftwaffe's ability to mount effective resistance. Maps recovered from a shattered bunker show a grim picture. Cities marked with skull symbols denoting total destruction. Protocols shifted from defense to evacuation and survival. Behind the scenes, whispers of defeat circulated among commanders, overshadowed by propaganda. A coded message intercepted by Allied intelligence revealed a rare moment of candor. "Our wings are clipped. The furnace claims all." How did this climactic phase break the back of Germany's air defense? And what does this tell us about the limits of industrial warfare and technological escalation? Each episode is a document I pull from the dust of the archives. Share your own stories. Many of you have relatives who lived through that time, and your words help connect personal memory with archival evidence. Stay curious. Subscribe so you don't miss the next episode tomorrow. Beneath the smoke-choked skies of a ravaged Berlin, technicians huddled over hastily assembled intelligence reports. One photograph, grainy but unmistakable, depicted a B-29's undercarriage, its massive engines glinting, with a cold, mechanical menace designed to sustain long-range missions at unprecedented altitudes. Yet, amidst the technical marvel, a hidden vulnerability lay dormant in the bomber's complex systems. The early models suffered from engine overheating and fuel inefficiency, factors German engineers sought to exploit. Intercepted radio chatter from a Luftwaffe reconnaissance flight hinted at this knowledge, but the question lingered. Why did this intelligence fail to translate into effective tactical strikes? Could it be that the sheer scale of the B-29 raids masked crucial weaknesses, allowing them to slip through even as German pilots scanned the skies with mounting dread? What if the real battlefield was not just the skies, but the obscure corridors of command where information stalled? Meanwhile, the psychological impact on German crews was profound. A series of letters from a Luftwaffe pilot, smuggled out through resistance networks, detailed a growing sense of disorientation. The pilot described the eerie silence that followed. B-29 formations, a silence punctuated only by the distant roar of explosions consuming entire neighborhoods. The pilot's instruments, calibrated for familiar foes, faltered against the new bomber's speed and altitude. Night after night, the airfields bore witness to frustrated sorties as seasoned aces returned empty-handed or not at all. How did this erosion of confidence influence the Luftwaffe's tactical doctrine? Were commanders blinded by tradition, failing to adapt as their pilots faced a foe that defied conventional engagement? And beneath the surface, what fractures formed within the ranks as desperation took root? In the shadow of these losses, German industry scrambled to innovate. Blueprints for the Me-262 jet fighter arrived too late to shift the war's momentum, but revealed a last-ditch effort to regain air superiority. The jet's speed promised a chance to intercept B-29s before they reached their targets, yet logistical nightmares and fuel scarcity hampered deployment. Simultaneously, upgraded anti-aircraft systems were installed around strategic cities. Flak towers bristling with 88mm cannons firing in synchronized salvos. A captured Allied reconnaissance map, annotated by German artillery officers, marked these zones with hopeful precision. Still, the B-29s adapted, altering flight paths and employing electronic jamming to blunt defenses. Was this technological duel a race against time, or a futile attempt to plug a widening breach in Germany's aerial shield? Could the Reich marshal enough innovation before the inferno consumed its last bastions? The dawn of March 1945 brought with it a chilling new chapter. Intelligence reports from an embattled German command bunker revealed an unsettling pattern. B-29 raids were no longer random acts of destruction, but precise, calculated strikes aimed at crippling transportation hubs, power plants, and communication centers. A faded map, stained with soot and blood, highlighted the rail yards of Dresden and the factories of Leipzig, targets reduced to burning skeletons. Radio intercepts captured frantic coordination attempts between Luftwaffe units, underscored by an undercurrent of panic. Pilots spoke of ghost formations appearing out of nowhere, their bomb bays unleashing torrents of fire with surgical precision. How had the Allies refined their tactics so rapidly? Were these raids mere acts of attrition, or part of a deeper strategy to dismantle the very veins of German industry and morale? What secrets lay behind the sudden shift from widespread destruction to targeted annihilation? In the skies, German pilots faced an impossible calculus. The once familiar contours of their homeland were now obscured by a haze of smoke and ash. Veteran squadron commanders recounted missions where fuel shortages forced them to abort interceptions, leaving cities vulnerable. A rare surviving photograph, taken from the cockpit of a crippled FW-190, captured the haunting silhouette of a B-29 retreating into the gray horizon, its engines humming a dirge. Training manuals issued in early 1945 urged pilots to adopt hit-and-run tactics, focusing on disabling engines rather than direct confrontations. Yet, according to surviving mission logs, these efforts yielded scant success. Why did the Luftwaffe's tactical adaptations fail to stem the tide? Were German pilots fighting a war they had already lost in the air? Or was there a more profound collapse in strategy and morale beneath the surface? Amidst the growing chaos, civilian accounts filtered into the archives, diaries, testimonies, and clandestine photographs chronicling the aftermath of the raids. Streets once vibrant with life lay buried under rubble. Fires burned unchecked for days, turning neighborhoods into vast ashes peace. An engineer's sketch, discovered in a ruined municipal office, depicted the devastating impact of incendiary bombs deployed by the B-29s, devices designed not merely to destroy buildings, but to ignite a conflagration beyond control. The smell of burning flesh and melted metal permeated survivor testimonies, a sensory horror that haunted the collective memory. How did the German populace reconcile the scale of destruction with the promises of victory broadcast by propaganda? And behind the official reports, what human stories of loss and resilience went untold, buried beneath the ruins of a disintegrating Reich? By April 1945, the Reich's skies had become a desolate battleground. Fuel shortages grounded many Luftwaffe units, and experienced pilots were dwindling at an alarming rate. A classified report from a German airfield commander outlines the grim reality. Our wings are clipped, our will falters. Meanwhile, American intelligence intercepted communications, revealing a new Allied tactic: daylight precision raids combined with nighttime incendiary attacks, designed to maximize disruption. A weathered map, annotated with strike patterns, over Hamburg and Berlin, shows concentric circles of devastation spreading outward. The B-29s, once rare specters, now dominated the airspace with relentless frequency. How did the dwindling German forces attempt to counter this overwhelming pressure? Was there any hope left in the mechanical marvels or sheer courage of the pilots? Or had the industrial war machine finally ground to a halt under the weight of technological supremacy? Concurrently, a secret memorandum from the Reich Air Ministry surfaced, revealing internal debates about shifting resources from aircraft production to ground defenses and evacuation efforts. The memo mentions the imminent collapse of urban centers, and the unsustainable cost of aerial engagements. A faded photograph accompanying the document portrays a group of exhausted officers poring over maps, their faces etched with defeat. Despite these warnings, bureaucratic inertia and competing priorities hamstrung decisive action. Could this internal paralysis explain why entire cities fell like tinder to the B-29 firestorms? And what does this tell us about the limits of centralized command in the face of an adaptive, technologically advanced adversary? Amidst this turmoil, clandestine footage from a resistance cell captures the aftermath of a B-29 raid on a small industrial town. Blackened ruins stretch as far as the eye can see. Survivors sift through rubble, their faces hollow with shock. The camera lingers on twisted metal girders and shattered windows, evidence of the bombers' indiscriminate fury. This footage, suppressed by Nazi censors but preserved by underground networks, reveals a side of the war often obscured by statistics: the human cost etched into every collapsed building and scorched street. How did such scenes influence the will to resist or surrender among the German population? And beyond the rubble, what silent stories of survival and loss remain concealed, waiting to be uncovered? In the final weeks before Germany's surrender, the skies bore witness to a relentless crescendo. B-29 superfortresses flew in unprecedented numbers, their formations stretching for miles, blotting out the sun like a malignant cloud. A recently uncovered photo from a downed German reconnaissance plane shows the eerie scale. Dozens of bombers, engines roaring in unison, their shadows cast over the devastated Ruhr Valley. German pilots, increasingly inexperienced, were tasked with intercepting these colossal raids with dwindling fuel and aging aircraft. Intercept reports speak of frantic dogfights where the odds were insurmountable. Yet, despite the overwhelming power, fragments of resistance remained. Small groups of fighters employing desperate, last-ditch tactics to slow the inferno. How did these final aerial battles shape the collapse of German air defenses? Could any act of valor alter the course of a war already decided by industrial might and technological innovation? Underneath the relentless bombardment, entire cities were transformed into ghost towns. A series of post-raid reconnaissance photographs show the skeletal remains of Hamburg, Dresden, and Berlin. Once vibrant centers of culture and industry, now vast fields of rubble and ash. Firestorms raged unchecked, fueled by the incendiaries deployed with terrifying efficiency. A surviving engineer's log details the failure of firefighting efforts, overwhelmed by the scale and intensity of the destruction. The urban landscape itself seemed to crumble, swallowing whole neighborhoods in flames. What strategic calculus justified such total annihilation? And behind the cold military objectives, how did these scorched earth tactics fracture the social and psychological fabric of the German people? As the Reich's final embers flickered, a declassified Allied report revealed a grim acknowledgement. The B-29 raids had not only shattered German industrial capacity, but irrevocably altered the nature of aerial warfare. Their combination of altitude, speed, payload, and precision bombing redefined the limits of destruction. Yet, within German archives, a haunting question persisted. Could anything have been done differently? The memoir of a Luftwaffe strategist hints at missed opportunities and fatal underestimations. Behind the veil of propaganda and official records, the true story of how German pilots were overwhelmed and their cities turned to ashes remains a complex tapestry of technological marvel, human endurance, and strategic failure. What lessons, then, does this tale hold for the future of warfare and memory? In the hushed aftermath, as Allied forces advanced into the heart of a shattered Germany, the battered remnants of the Luftwaffe faced a somber reckoning. pilots, once proud and unyielding, now grappled with the ghosts of impossible battles, engagements against an enemy whose machines seemed invincible, whose raids reduced cities to ashes with relentless precision. A final, smuggled letter from a squadron commander encapsulates this brutal truth. We fought shadows in the sky, and in the end, the shadows consumed us. The scale of destruction wrought by the B-29 superfortress was not merely a testament to Allied technological supremacy, but a stark revelation of the vulnerabilities within the German war effort, fractures in intelligence, innovation, and morale that no single weapon alone could have exposed. How was it possible that these flying fortresses, designed for another theater, became instruments of annihilation over Europe? And what does this unraveling tell us about the unforgiving calculus of total war, where cities burn and pilots fall, swallowed by an inferno beyond their control?